Thank you, Jasmine. So I would like to say a few words today about what I termed for the purpose of this presentation, EcoMacbeths. So two productions that were shown and showcased at the International Shakespeare Festival in Gdańsk, which I am very intimately involved with, and I have been um, a part of this community for quite a long time now. So those two productions, I think they have something to offer in terms of how you can approach um, theater making from eco-critical perspective, taking into account not only or not first and foremost the things that we connect with eco theater. So, how to be green, how not to, how not to use new materials, how to repurpose everything, but basically everything that is described in the so-called Green Book that you can freely access. They have something more to say about how to create theater that is fundamentally different from what we usually consider mainstream, like big productions with a lot of human and non-human actors at times employed, and so on. So the two productions that I would like to let's say advertised to you today are they were showcased during the two recent festivals. The first of them is Macbeth, directed by Paweł Palcat. It was showcased 2 years ago during the 28th International Shakespeare Festival in Gdańsk. It had been produced by the Bałtycki Teatr Dramatyczny, which is the Baltic dramatic theatre in Koszalin, and this location is not, it is not unimportant. It remains very significant for the shape that this production had taken. This particular adaptation offers a profoundly reimagined reading of Shakespearean tragedy through the eco-critical lens, and it really does focus on how human beings and their natural environment are interrelated. So, in a sense, eco-criticism is at the core of this production, not only in its technicality. Right, so it does recast the familiar story of ambition and guilt and tyranny, but it is or it becomes a commentary on the ecological and moral entanglements of humankind within the natural order. Among the most striking symbols that I'm going to kind of discuss today is the figure of a deer, which becomes a central motive, connecting the human and the non-human worlds, foregrounding the themes of predation, vulnerability, and ethical lack of balance. And it really is, or seems to be, an extended meditation on Ross's words when he narrates the story of the killing of the family of Macbeth by saying that your castle is surprised, your wife and babe savagely slaughtered, to relate the manner where on the quarry of this murdered deer, right? To add the death of you. And obviously the deer in this passage is it is a wordplay, right? It is both quarry of the deer, whose bodies are heaped, form a heap, but also the dear ones, right? So the family that is treated in such an inhumane way. We could interpret Ross's words in this manner. So in order to do that, to really focus on the themes of predation, of vulnerability, and ethical imbalance between the human and the natural world, Palcat Productions abandons the metaphysical trappings of Shakespeare's play, right? The witches, the prophecy, the supernatural interventions. It replaces them with the austere, human-centered brutality that you can see in the picture in the slide, that is, however, grounded in ecological awareness. The witches in this production are women tending to the wounded after battle and doubling as servants in Macbeth. They observe the events, as you can see, also using cameras. And they engage with water just like Lady Macbeth, to kind of, which is also kind of a commentary on refraction, on resemblances that are often false. Um, um, and Palsas aligns these figures with a heightened sensitivity that is both medical, you could say, and ecological. They are the figures that, that bring in the corpses of the deer onto the stage, and they present the characters. They put those corpses in different places, and as you can see, these are objects. These are puppets. These are not real animals, obviously, but their treatment of those animals, which is very tactile, so to speak, very subtle, very full of empathy and sympathy for those dead, is something that really draws attention to those figures. So, as you can see in this slide, they are pushing the dead deer into the arms of the dying Macbeth. So the deer is both a physical representation of the natural world, but also, in a way, it functions symbolically as, in this case, that part of Macbeth that he kills himself in a way, which is the, let's call it primeval innocence. So as you can see, this image of the deer is recurrent, and it's central to this production, and it is visually integrated into the performance, but it's also present orally in the soundscape. So stags, they do appear in the video projections all the time. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to find a photo in which you would have those scenes in which they do appear. Those video projections are kind of real life footage recorded in infrared. They approach the so-called camera traps and gaze directly at the camera lens. They engage the audience every time that they appear, to the extent that when a stag appears in the initial scene with the witches, because I think that she noticed there are only two witches in this production, it seems that it is the third witch. It is the one that, like Hecate, like that chthonic figure that really watches us watching the production. So the deer is always there, gazing, looking on, so to speak. Also, the roaring of the rutting stags reverberates throughout the performance, especially in those scenes in which you have human violence. So it seems to be like a sonic motif that underscores this primal, cyclical aggression that drives the play's human actors. So again, the deer seem to be more than a prop. They really do seem to participate in the performance. They seem they seem to me as non-human actors in this production. So by looking at us and by looking at seemingly at what is happening, they create this feeling, they are spectators to human savagery, that they do observe the scenes of murder and political betrayal much as the audience does. So in a way, we all become a part of the herd, right? And basically, what I think Palcat's conception of that deer's gaze is a radical decentering of the human perspective, the enlightened perspective, right? Because both the deer and us, we are witnesses of the atrocity. Our observations, both them, that their and ours, are mute and remain so. So it seems that, critically speaking, this gesture of, like, creating this plane, this equality of gaze, it destabilizes the hierarchy which separates the human from the animal. Um, um, you could stipulate that Macbeth's downfall results not only from moral transgression, but from violating the natural law, which is not perhaps God-given, but which really exists in the natural world, right? And a number of reviews noted that in the stag society, if you please, right, in the herd, a stag that harms its own young is expelled, right? So it is a contrast with what happens on stage. So it seems that Macbeth's atrocity, Macbeth's killings, becomes something of an ecological aberration, a violation of the equilibrium that regulates living systems. So this is one this is the first production, and then the second one that I would like to talk about today, Macbeth, the Sleep Study, directed by Adam Walny, which was showcased last year during the 29th International Shakespeare Festival in Gdańsk. And this production is very, very different, even though the subject matter is the same, or rather it seems the same. It draws from the same material. Adam Walny's theater is the theater of it. It is a puppet theater. It is an object theater. It is a theater in which its director manipulates the elements, so to speak. And you could say that it has been grounded in ecological reflection, but it is not drawn from eco-criticism per se. It is rather it is rather connected with the tradition of the Polish theatre, in the vein of Grotowski, poor theatre, austere theatre, theatre of austerity. It is this kind of, let's say, eco-dramaturgy that treats non-human forces, materials, elements, but also natural processes as creative agents on the stage. So this principle emerges in this particular production through play, which is the key medium of the performance, as you can see. This piece that he presented during the festival in the experimental theater, in the experimental theater part of the festival, is a theater of matter, right? A theater of figures, right? Role play and the shadows that they cast. The performance really deconstructed Macbeth and focused on both the violence that happens in the production, but also disconnection from the materials that constitute life. Walny basically replaces words with gesture and playing with the matter, and seems in this way to engage in kind of a eco dialogue, let's say, in which that substance comes to embody the characters and comes to speak in a way. And obviously, technically speaking, there are voices that are laid over for the characters, but the word becomes secondary to the action here. Um, there is a lot to be said about how clay becomes like the symbolic substance, obviously because of its long tradition of its being symbolically treated as the substance from which all life comes from in the Judeo-Christian tradition. And it is also an interesting thing that this is a new material for him, because he used to, in his Hamlet, as far as I remember, he used to timber, right? So, so here clay is used, and when you think about it, it is soft, it is impermanent, it is very different from wood. Um, those characters when the demiurge, right, creates them in his puppet play, they stick to the demiurge's hands, right? They crumble before our eyes. Their transformation, it becomes a metaphor for the fate of all the characters in the production, where Macbeth's figure is just basically built up by the clay taken away as if the bodies of the victims and put together to recreate him as this gigantic figure that finally falls apart under the weight of his own ambition, so to speak. So it is not only a scenic material, it is a non-human performer. And here you can see, there are only two people that kind of ran the performance. Here you can see Macbeth being built, right? So clay is not merely a scenic material, but also a non-human performer, becomes a true partner in the dramatic act. And it links creation with erosion, with impermanence, as I say. The gesture of molding and or destruction, it echoes more than human time, right? Because the use of clay just kind of suggests geological time. So humanity becomes impermanent, and kind of subscribes and becomes subservient to the natural cycles of formation and decay. So you could say that this tragedy is translated into a geological poetics of sorts. To conclude, because I think that this is what I should do now. The Walny production, Walny's production treats Shakespeare's drama as a pretext to tell the tale of loss, right? Of ashes to ashes, dust to dust, to dust, and it becomes in the process a fundamentally ecological recognition of the human condition. It does not chronicle moral corruption per se, but rather material transformation. Clay becomes both the actor and the archive of sorts, a witness to how the human dream of creation collapses back into itself, the earth. This use of elements of materials on a theoretical plane means that Walny redefines ecological or eco-critical theater not as activism, but as a philosophy of sorts, right? A sensory philosophy, because it is through art that we become aware of matters of vitality, something that we have forgotten. Um, that is a fundamental realization that Shakespeare's contemporaries still shared. Um, as each clay figure crumbles, we see Macbeth not as a villain, not as a victim, but as one more figure that is molded and dissolved according to the pattern that is the fabric of life. Paweł Palcat's Macbeth transforms Shakespeare's tragedy in a more cerebral manner. It becomes a meditation on the entanglement of species and the ethics of predation. Right, the deer that is both fragile and noble, that becomes both a spectator and a symbol, and mediates between worlds, reminding us that violence is something that humans inflict on one another, and it's different in kind from the violence within nature. By stripping Macbeth of supernaturalism and suffusing it with ecological imagery, or rather underlining that ecological imagery, Palcat replaces prophecy with something that looks like ecological determinism, right? When we break our bond with the natural order, the world answers back, and we don't like it. I mean, the ending is our death. That's it. Thank you.